I have this kind of like pendulum in my head when I'm writing songs. Like I don't want it to be too much of one thing or the other. Or if it goes really far in one direction, like go all the way there and then mix in something on the complete other end to kind of end up in the middle again.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If the four of you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
I'm Cory. I sing and play bass.
I'm Terrell. Play guitar.
I'm Pat. I also play guitar.
And I'm Nick, and I play drums.
And gentlemen, what is the name of your band?
Thætas.
Yep, Thætas. It's made up word, but
And how would you describe the music of Thætas? What would you say Thætas is?
so I could say when we first started everything, the idea was to make something akin to that mid 2000s Willowtip discography. Something works of bands like Commit Suicide, bands that were technical and brutal, but still had strong songwriting, catchy riffs. And that's kind of what we go for. Obviously, mixing in our quote unquote skronk elements from all the stuff we love, like Malignancy, Gore Guts, all that good stuff to Peter Sanity. And I'm sure we'll dive into it more, but I realize just thinking about this album coming into it that there wasn't too much conscious decision of being other bands. It was kind of just like, what were we feeling and what were we playing? So this album is our sound.
Yeah. I think at the time when we started the band, we were listening to, at least for me, like it was like the brutal stuff, the Wormed and Defeated Sanity, 7H, Inherit Disease and stuff like that. But kind of, at least for me, the background was more Cynic, Anata, Old Death, so stuff like that. So the concept was to kind of do brutal death metal, but with just a bunch of the weird stuff too. So Gory Guts and whatever. And the other big thing, like the starting philosophy, was kind of the all killer, no filler approach. It was a very conscious decision to, you know, you listen to a lot of records, and there's a lot of really cool parts with kind of some stuff in between where you kind of get the idea that the bands were like, it's good enough for this part, and we'll get to the next part. Like anything like that is chopped. The idea was have every riff be awesome, which is why we couldn't top 2 minutes and 45 seconds for a really long time.
Oh yeah,
So
that's the key length.
Yeah.
that was kind of the idea. Yeah.
That's our magic number right there.
Yeah. We would write songs and be like, wow, this is really long. 249. Yeah, it's just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Cory, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, pretty much. I was going for like the Hellchild vocal style, really. I was only singing back then, so that was kind of my input, really.
Hellchild, the Japanese band?
Yep.
That's an amazing, underrated band.
Yeah, favorite vocalist of all time.
Yeah, no, that dude's vocals were something else. I remember that band. I saw them at CB's. Do you remember Ralphie from Disassociate?
Circulating Contradiction.
Yeah, Ralphie from Disassociate used to have these summer mini fests, and he brought Hellchild over one year. Yeah, that was a great album.
I saw them with Disassociate in Philly.
Oh wow,
Go fig.
that's awesome. Nick, as far as the style of the band as a drummer, is there anything you want to add?
I will say, in the beginning, it was, like Pat and everybody said, it was kind of just brutal, as brutal as we can get, trying to figure out what our sound was. Now it's more jazz, just weird parts that, we can throw in here and there and just kind of make this genre of music our own. And yeah, I think that's what this new album represents a lot. So different sound.
So Terrell's been on the podcast a few times. The rest of you guys haven't, but I was talking with Nick before we started recording, and we've actually been, or we were back when I was living in New York, kind of running in the same circles. We have some mutual friends in common. Do you guys want to talk about what brought you together and what the Terrell touched on this as far as the Wolves Tip sound that you guys were going for originally, but what your intentions were when you guys first put this project together?
I would say more or less this concept of when I met Pat back in like 2008, eventually that we would have a band together that would have this kind of sound, or at least into the more obscure stuff that we liked. And turns out through mutual friends, and we didn't get to doing Thætas demos and stuff until around what, 2013, I believe is when we started jamming together. At least my first jam with Nick was October 2013, which, looking back is 13.
Yeah, might have been 14.
Okay. Oh yeah, true. So
Somewhere around there.
yeah, that's 14 was definitely same demo and kind of the starts of Blasty jams, actually. One of the tracks in the new album, the drum pattern I kind of like jammed with Nick in 2013. So
yeah, we would use that as a like a practice, a little warm up thing.
Exactly.
So now it's in a song, which is cool.
So it was me through Pat, and then Nick through a mutual friend, and then Cory I happened to be familiar with through online through Last FM, an amazing website. The real ones know. That was KMFCM. What was I? I forgot what I was watching. Sparrows, probably, like a flourishing reference for the time. But that's kind of how we did it. Pat wrote the first two songs. He jammed out and had that bass. I had jammed with Nick before, and then the third song we all wrote together, and that was kind of the big start of everything.
Yeah, I guess shout out to Nick Schwanger for being the mutual connection. Always got to throw that out there.
Yep.
So the style that you had, even originally, Pat talked about it as no filler, but I think the way that you guys arrange songs is pretty unique. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like how that approach influenced the way that you guys write songs?
I would like to say that I think why the songs get written the way they do for I don't know how many songs on Shrines, but I would write, a majority of the drum parts first and then send them over to these guys to basically say, do whatever you want. And I don't know if other people write the drums and, put the drums in order to write other, songs, but that's how we did it. And it works. On the new album, we have a couple drum songs that we did, first wrote the drum parts for, but this one's a little, we wrote songs a little differently for this second album.
Yeah, I guess those first two songs Terrell alluded to on the demo, I wrote the guitar parts, but I wrote them to cell phone recordings of Nick's drums. So, it was kind of even like that back then. I feel like the way, at least when I'm involved with writing the guitar stuff, like, kind of have this constant trying to correct for myself thing going on. So, I'll have a couple of super brutal parts, and then I'll be like, I don't want this song to sound like every other brutal band. Let's make the next part a little weird or have a catchy thing going on or whatever. Do that a little bit and then go, oh, maybe this is getting too light. Maybe we got to go back to, so I don't know. I have this kind of like pendulum in my head when I'm writing songs. Like, I don't want it to be too much of one thing or the other. Or if it goes really far in one direction, like go all the way there and then mix in something on the complete other end to kind of end up in the middle again.
How much of this is room writing and how much of it is Nick coming up with stuff on his own and then sending it to you guys?
Like there's a good mix. Like,
We all come up with stuff and bring it in, honestly.
yeah,
Okay.
But like, I didn't have as much input when I was only singing. This album is the first album I'm actually playing bass on, so I started a couple of songs, maybe two of them.
Yep.
Two of them I started on bass and just let the guys go on from there. And we had a couple of songs we started with drums, and we all added on from there. So it was a lot more collaborative on this run, I would say, between all of us.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody explained it pretty well too, because we tend to have our own kind of formula, even though everybody's approaching it from different ways. It tends to be pretty consistent, whether it's either Nick writing out usually like a full drum song, and then a lot of times if Pat or me is writing a song, it'll turn out to be like exactly half a song, at least when it first starts, and then then we expand from there. So there is like usually a bulk of a song is being brought in, and then we're playing it together, and then that's kind of refines the repetitions, because then it seems, does this part seem natural? Do you want more things? Do you now factor in vocals, as opposed to like when you're writing it a little more insularly? But like Cory alluded to, overall this album's definitely more collaborative because there was a lot of jamming. Some of the songs we kind of just played together for years, literally, and that kind of came through. It feels seamless at this point,
Yeah, there's kind of like, there's a good chunk of them where Nick has the drums pretty much all the way through. There's a good chunk where, like, I mean, I think maybe I wrote one or two songs start to finish, but I almost kind of find it hard to do that. Like, I'll write a good chunk, but I want to bring it to everyone else, see if everyone likes it, see how it flows. We end up moving some stuff around and then kind of leave the end open, just to make sure everyone has input. We do like, there's a few room writing songs. I don't know. I guess it'd almost be like a third room writing, a third drums, and like a third just someone started it and, it stays active for a little bit. Usually we don't come in with like, this is the song, that's it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it's behind the scenes of, hey, I sent you this clip of whatever, and then add this to it. And then we're not fortunate enough to jam a lot. maybe once a month, if that. So, we have time to, behind the scenes work on these songs. And then once we all get together, it's like, okay, cool. We're slamming stuff out. So, which is good. It works for us.
Mm-hmm.
So Pat touched on this a little bit, but the sound of Thætas is fairly non-traditional as far as death metal goes. You guys have a lot of parts that could be considered like avant or progressive or even like jazzy. I'm curious where that comes from. If any of you guys come from a jazz or improv background and are bringing that into your writing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're all into that stuff. I feel like for my part, I bring a decent amount of it in. Like growing up, I feel like I was maybe slightly late to super brutal death metal and kind of came into metal through, I mean, there's like the usual stuff like Megadeth or whatever, but also like Cacophony and Tony McAlpine and stuff like that. Nevermore. I was kind of drawn to those kinds of bands like Acre Cocky and, you know, stuff that was a little off. But then also, like, I don't know, I grew up listening to a lot of like fusion jazz, like Mahavishnu Orchestra, the Dixie Dregs, and Steve Morse and stuff like that. For me, Steve Morse is kind of a big songwriting influence. Like, I read a lot about what he thought, and everything's kind of efficient. You don't want to, if a part's long enough, don't do it another two times. Like, end it there. Make sure there's like a tension and release, like if you have the same thing over and over again, it can build and that's good, but needless repetitions kind of get chopped. And I don't know, like learning to play a lot of that stuff, there's like a playfulness to the guitar parts where like try not to overthink it and just there's a lot of stuff in there where I realized like some of the music's a little odd for brutal death metal, but ultimately when there's a guy screaming and like drums that sound like a machine gun behind you, it sounds pretty heavy no matter what you do. So you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Terrell, do you agree with my characterization? Like, do you understand what I mean when I say like the riffs and the scales are not like the typical death metal kind of sound?
Yeah. Oh, no, no, for sure. And at least a big approach to our playing, and I think what comes out with the band is we try to mix things that are like clearly death metal, like Pat described, things like the vocals, things like the drums, things like even just like heavy guitars, but we're adding in like those idiosyncrasies and then like all those like unique kind of things to make it different. I mean, a big thing is like, just like I said, like an MO of the band in the beginning with the Willow Tip stuff or all killer no filler was also limited use of power chords, which already is going to differentiate you from a majority of bands, and also use the power chord now as like a release because you're playing something different that when the power chord comes up, it kind of punches harder. So that's just like a little trick that we do. And Pat alluded to it too, that there's a lot of freedom in the band in terms of like what we're doing. And I think, at least for me, like growing up as a performer, I was like so anal about like, oh, I got to play every part right. And then over time, I realized I became a better player by kind of playing worse. And sorry, guys, I'm admitting to playing worse. Not in the sense that it's just more like, focusing on like expressing yourself more through the guitar. And then naturally, you're more seasoned as a player as well, too. And I think as a band, too, we've become more free and open like that. And part of that is the music that we love, the more open jazz stuff, even some classical stuff, I think would influence my writing. But then also the scene that we played in and then the bands we played with kind of influenced us to also become like more improvisers and stuff. I almost want to say this band has like a code switching aspect to it where we kind of we play with the brutal bands, but we're kind of the weird one out. Then we play with the improv bands, but we could still hang, but we're still like our own thing. So it's really hard to kind of just pin us down. That's the goal.
It was really good playing in the New York scene where, like, I don't know, you could imagine in a lot of places, like, there's not so much of an audience for the weirdo stuff. And I don't know, it kind of works out. Like, we've played with some definitely non-metal artists, but it still kind of works. Just like also having people that are way more out there or like real jazz musicians say like, hey, your stuff is good. It's like kind of musically validating and also like, all right, I didn't go too far out there. This is landing where it I wasn't sure, but it seems like it's working. So let's keep doing it.
A lot of our first shows were with straight up slam band, and I wasn't sure how that would go over, but it worked. So
yeah, like everybody said, we listen to the brutal stuff, but then also like I'm a big fan of the Grateful Dead. I love Steely Dan, Bernard Purdy, like the Purdy Shuffle, stuff like that. To try to incorporate, jam band type stuff and, swing funk kind of beats with a double bass going behind it. Like that's just weird things that is not traditional for this genre, but we make it work.
Terrell, when you said playing worse, do you mean like looser?
Yes.
Like not necessarily hitting the beat every time?
Correct. I made it sound way more dramatic and like put myself on the spot. But yes, and looser, really.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes through confidence, comes through just playing and that comfort.
Yeah. And so do you think like that looser feeling is what contributes to Thætas maybe having like a jazz kind of feel to it?
Yeah, I would say it was always kind of an undertone, like because it's been in our influences. But the first album, I would say our songwriting was a little more deliberate. Not to say that our new songwriting is more willy-nilly. It's more collaborative, a little more jammy. And then you'll kind of hear that, especially with the more atmospheric parts or the more jazzy, swingy parts. That comes more from playing looser and from being comfortable jamming with each other.
So on the 26th of June, the second Thætas album, called The Irredeemable Age, will be released by Profound Lore. We spoke a little bit about this album having a more collaborative process during the writing stage. But did you go into this with any intentions as far as wanting to focus on different aspects of your sound or maybe build on things that you did in the past?
For me, this album, it was my focus to record the drums and play more of I guess in my outlook of it, of heavier. When I recorded the old album, there was certain things of the drums that I wasn't really happy with. And then we sat on things, the recordings for, 2 years because of COVID and things. So with this one, I wanted to make sure that I was ready to record the sound that I was looking for, really. And I think I captured that on this album.
Yeah, I feel like, the first album, like, it was our first album, well, obviously. So, we did the demo. We had a split in there too, which actually most of those songs are in kind of towards the end of the first album. So it's almost like an in-between, really, even though it came out first. The first album, I feel like for me, I kind of got out a lot of the basic things that I wanted to try, like, oh man, it would be sweet to be in a brutal death metal band and have the slam part and the triplet blast part and etc. And so going into the second one, it's like, all right, kind of done a lot of the obvious moves in our own idiosyncratic way. Don't want to do the same thing again. I think all of us try to, if there's a part that sounds too similar to something we already did, it's like, oh no, we gotta mutate that and change it, and we can't just do the same thing again. So it just forces us to get more creative. I don't know if it was a deliberate decision to do this, that, or the other thing, but that's kind of how it worked out.
Yeah, I would say the progression, like Pat said, was more natural and not as deliberate, even though I think it's very apparent, right? Like, at least to us, it does have a different tone, a different feel. Like I was alluding to earlier too, about playing more loosely. At least for me, I was never a person to really do leads. I would always do like a little bit of leads and stuff like that. But we talked about this a little bit with the Reeking album. That was my first time doing like a lot of leads, and that was kind of a force of function from doing it live. And then with this album, I decided, to add a little more leads than I would ever do. So there's a little bit of that. But in terms of influences, nothing was ever deliberate for me, I would think. Maybe usually what happens is I'll play a riff and then afterwards I'll be like, okay, it sounds like something that's familiar, but I never really go in consciously thinking, oh, I want to play a riff like this band.
I gotcha. Yeah.
And so everything is just natural, I would say.
Cory, I think you said this is the first album that you were playing on and that you contributed music to.
Yeah, first album playing an instrument, basically. So,
Yeah.
I had time to figure out what my sound was going to be and all of that because, our old bass player, Jimmy, he played like a 6-string. He played with his fingers. It's like a lot different. So I'm over here playing with a pick, and I have this like I was figuring out my pedal board as we went, like playing shows during that time and during practice. And when I had a good amount of time to get my sound down by the time we started like recording the album. And I just wanted to add, like, obviously it was going to be different. I just wanted it to stand out in comparison to the first record. So it was like, oh yeah, I can tell it's not the same lineup.
Yeah. Stand out how though? Tempo-wise, did you want to try new stuff?
I think the new album, the first album was more groovy to me.
Okay.
I think. So this is a faster album.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which that's just kind of how it came out. That's how we were writing at the time. Because I don't know. We didn't want to do the same thing again, obviously, but we didn't necessarily set out to do just like the complete opposite of what we did. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The leads is a good point. Like, I don't know. Like, I like doing leads. I think on the first album, I was kind of conservative with not doing too many of them, kind of being afraid that, all right, if there's a bunch of noodly stuff on this, it won't be a brutal death metal thing anymore or whatever. And as we kind of continued to do this, there were more and more opportunities to do it. I never wanted to shoehorn in the Jason Becker solo or whatever, but there's a couple more chances to do that kind of a thing. And I don't know, that was just kind of fun.
Yeah, it's weird to think about this, but it's like post 30s death metal, as in you kind of just grow into yourself and you don't really care as much anymore.
Yeah.
But you know,
that's right. Yeah.
You still kind of keep up with the youngins. But you don't feel the need to like satisfy a trend just because we're just playing as we play.
All right.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Terrell, do you handle the engineering on the recordings?
Yeah, a lot of them, except for I would say the split. But for this one specifically, I did a lot of the engineering, the editing with the raw tracks, and then we handed those over to Colin, who did the mixing and then the reamping of the guitars and the bass as well. So that was a big relief, and it was awesome to kind of hear somebody else do some production work with the band. But yeah, typically noodling behind. Actually, with this one, I was like specifically engineer with the recording, not even trying to play along and track. It was just kind of like running the board and stuff.
Can you tell me about tracking? Like, where were Nick's parts recorded? Where were the other guys' parts recorded?
Yeah, so this one was recorded at Nick's house. And so once we have the third album, we're going to have to record at Nick's third place of residence, because the first album was at the first house and this one's at a different one, which kind of has different acoustics and everything. We've gotten better with recording, got better mics, etc. And then everybody else kind of recorded remotely on their own. I think, yeah, Cory, you also did vocals at home too, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So that was all just individual. And maybe Pat and I had a session where we sat together and recorded some more layers and then shipped off the tracks. So we're very used to being like that file transfer kind of band, stacking layers kind of thing.
Okay. Terrell knows I've been asking bands this a lot lately, but Cory, did you double track your vocals? Do you believe in double tracking?
Yes, I probably didn't do it as much on this one, but I definitely did do that in certain parts.
So I've heard pros and cons to double tracking. I'm curious, when you do double tracking, why is it?
Sometimes if I think there was like a mistake somewhere, it kind of covers it up.
Okay.
But also just mixing the two different tracks together, you get a more inhuman sound out of it.
Yeah. See, I always thought that was the case for a lot of bands, and I've heard like, maybe some bigger bands do a lot of double tracking to get that huge sound. But Terrell, if you remember, like a couple months ago, we were discussing this, and production-wise, it can have the opposite effect, right?
Yeah, it all depends on the effect, because I remember, Will was adamant about mono vocals, single take, and both have a different effect. Mono, a singular track is more punchy, more direct, and what Cory was mentioning is more inhuman, which is kind of the vibe we're going for. I would say, at least on the editing side, too, not everything is necessarily doubled. And sometimes, at least with the first album, I was creating like vocal lines, because it'll be like, okay, here's take one, and then it's a part of take two, and then they blend into each other. They're not necessarily going all at the same time.
I see. Okay.
And then I realized Cory was even more deliberate with it this time around, where he had his main track and then he had different voices and different layers, which is similar to what Will does. But Cory is more liberal with layering certain things throughout.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still, I guess I actually didn't see the takes, right? But it's not consistently double tracked, right? Like Behemoth style. It's
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of parts that are double tracked for kind of emphasis or to have a mix of voices, but yeah, at least from what I remember, and Cory, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like you did 2+ takes of the exact same thing and layered them on top of each other.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
Yeah, like it's not like that.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So you mentioned working with Colin. Did Colin work on any of the previous releases, or was this the first one that you guys went to?
He mastered the first one.
Okay, I gotcha. I don't know what else we can say about Colin, right? Like he's the Scott Burns of our generation.
Indeed.
Yep.
I spoke to a band who flew all the way from Italy to work with him. I spoke to a band who flew from Minnesota. He's the guy. Did Colin handle everything until the master?
Oh, on the first record or the second record?
On this one.
Oh, he just from the guitar reamping and mixing onward, he took care of.
Okay.
And bass reamping too.
And bass ramping, yeah. So all string reamping and then everything else was we re-engineered and then he did the rest.
Was it mastered by somebody else?
No, he
Nah, he
also
did it.
mastered. Yep.
Okay. As far as the sound of the album, what did you want Colin to bring to this? What did you want the finished sound to be?
I think for me, the thing I like the most about Colin's production is that it's very natural. You know, the drums sound like drums. Nothing's replaced. You know, he lets the acoustic breathe. It's not overly compressed. So that's one of the main reasons why I always was attracted to his sound. And, you know, he does a variety of things. He understands the style of music. He's not, someone who mostly does hardcore that kind of does death metal sometimes. Like, he's pretty deep in the world of esoteric, weirdo death metal and straightforward death metal. I mean, right? Like, he can run the gamut. So he kind of gets the style, and it's not going to sound overproduced, which for me is the big thing, especially when you do music like, not that we're a tech death band like Spawn of Possession style or something, but there's technical aspects, and when that stuff gets overproduced, I kind of tune out. Like it just can't sound like plastic if it's technical music.
Cory, as far as your bass sound and your vocals, was there anything specific that you wanted on the production?
I just wanted it to sound like it does live, really.
Okay. I mean, how would you describe that sound?
It's very,
Because the bass is a funny instrument in metal. Like, it can get buried very quickly between the kick drum and the downtuned guitars.
yeah, my tone, it's almost like a cross between like what like Steve Albini had on his stuff
Okay.
and something like Singing to the Trees of a Forest Fire. So
Okay.
a sound like that. I only have two pedals on it. It's just like a Sans amp and a B3K, and it's very simple, but it's got the distortion on it, like just the right amount of distortion. And I'm playing on a Jaguar. It already kind of has that sound as it is, so it just kind of amplifies that. So, and it wasn't drowned out. So,
Yeah. Nick, is there anything you want to say about Colin? About the finished production?
This album, the last album, pretty much anything that he does, always sounds great. I do like what Pat was saying, the natural sound of the drums. I don't use triggers or anything like that. It's pretty much like what Cory was saying. I'd like the album to sound like we do live or like at a practice. And I think Colin definitely nailed it on the head, mixing and mastering this thing. So he's the man.
So the album will be out at the end of June. We're, I think, at the very beginning of festival season. Do you guys have any plans to do any festivals or to take us on the road or anything like that?
No, I would say no immediate plans right now. I think we have just one little album release show, which is going to be a little delayed, so people have time to digest the album a little bit. But, hit us up if you want us to play a fest. That'll be cool,
Nice.
kind of the dream. Kind of the dream.
Maybe a big Reeking Aura, Buckshot, Thætas, Trog.
Yep, just keep me on stage. Just say, yeah, and I can get water for Trog.
Yeah.
So, by the time people hear this episode, The Irredeemable Age will be out through Profound Lore Records. Guys, not all at once, but someone, please tell the listeners how they can order the new album. What's the best way to get it?
You can check us out on Instagram or Facebook or whatever's popular social media at Thætas_BDM. Just look for Thætas at Bandcamp, and especially Profound Lore, which will be taking care of the distribution of this album, the LP, CD, and of course digital. So check out Profound Lore's Bandcamp and web store. Same with our Bandcamp, web store, Massacre merch. And we're going to have some new merch coming out to go along with the album as well.
Do you want to say anything about the two vinyl versions that Profound Lore created for this? I think there's a black one and a blue one, right? Or like a swirl, like a blue swirl.
Oh, I don't. You know more than I do. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, damn, we got two. Dude. I was like, whoa, dude, I didn't even realize.
I have yet to see them in person, so I gotta.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. I think we're actually going to be getting them soon.
Is it
Right.
AI? Is Profound Lore trolling
Yeah.
us with AI?
Who knows? We'll see, Chris. But I always love a good swirl. A nice, essentially blue. And our album is a little bit of blue. Same with the Reek, a little bit, and albums with their second album being blue. So this is our blue album.
Out of the Blue Album.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
Nice. Is there anything else you want to say about the album, or anything else? Anything else you want the listeners to know?
I just hope people dig it. It took a while. We were asked about it a lot, and we were working. So I'm happy it's coming out, and I hope people dig it.
Yeah, no, not much to add, but yeah, I think it's a very genuine piece of music, from us. So, if you don't like it, well, too bad. We wouldn't change anything. If you do like it, great. So there you go.
Nick, anything to add?
Yeah, just I think once Shrines came out, we had a couple of these songs written. So, it's been 6 years that time has finally come that people are going to hear these songs. And thanks to everybody who's, seen us, bought merch, bought our album, possibly would pre-order this album. It's awesome. It's going to be, hopefully you guys like it, because we worked hard on it.
Yeah, definitely. Everything came naturally. We hope everybody loves it. And like Pat said, if you don't like it, get off our lawn, etc. That's good.
So I actually do have something to add. I don't know if you remember this, Pat and Terrell, but 2016, when I was visiting New York, I ran into you guys after a show at St. Vitus. I think maybe Artificial Brain was playing. I can't remember who it was, but you guys were and one other person. I don't think it was Cory or Nick. Maybe it was a different former band member. But you guys were gathered around a phone listening to something, and it was the first demo. The first demo had just gone up on Bandcamp.
No way.
Do you guys remember this?
No, but man, it's been
it
a
was like
blur. I believe you.
Yeah.
That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I do remember, yeah, I vaguely remember meeting you. I thought it was in Maryland, actually, at Death
Well,
Fest.
we did
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
we did run into each other at MDF.
Yeah.
But I remember after a show at St. Vitus, because I used to take the 7 train home, so I used to have to cross over the bridge to go to Long Island
Classic.
City, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and I ran into you guys listening to the demo. I guess it had just been uploaded to Bandcamp, and I think like as soon as I got back to the apartment, I posted it online. And so, I'm stoked that you guys, your previous label was pretty good too, but now you guys are on Profound Lore. And I feel like over the last 10 years, like I've seen you guys like really, you had a sound, you had a style that was unique to you, but still like, kind of rooted in traditional like New York death metal. And, to see you guys come all this way, I think it's been great to watch. And especially since, Nick and I were talking about this before we started recording, but, we have mutual friends in common. So I just see you guys around all the time, and I'm stoked for you guys that you've come all this way, and I hope you can keep pushing. And I'm looking forward to doing this again in a few years for the next album.
Definitely, man. And we appreciate you, Adrian, for, always shedding light on the underground.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thanks a bunch, man.